1 p.m. we are doing a short interview with therapists and coaches all over the country, the best coaches and therapists that we can find, that we love. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Jacqui McCouat. Lovely to see you, Jacqui. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jacqui is a UKCP psychotherapist. She is on the board of the UKCP, which is the UK Council for Psychotherapy. You have a private practice and also work for the NHS. And today we're going to be talking about how we make sense of life right now in the middle of lockdown. So, Jacqui, I know that we were talking earlier about the kind of things that clients are coming to us with right now. What are you seeing? What are the problems that you see your clients facing right now? What are they kind of turning up in therapy sessions, and what are they talking about?
Wow, gosh, there's so many things going on, because I think, we're in this bubble at the moment, and I hear that word quite a lot, of being in a bubble, and it feels a bit artificial. And sometimes people questioning if what they're feeling is actually real, or if it's just a result of this. But people are noticing things like, if they're working from home, which a lot of people are, obviously, they don't have to commute anymore, that the office politics has all changed. There's been a rebalancing of power, all sorts of things that are informing them, and it's making them think more carefully, I suppose, about how they are and some of the beliefs that they formed previously, or how they thought they have to be. So it's a bit of a shifting dynamic, really.
Sure. And what about the people who are stuck at home? How's it helping them with their relationships? What about money? How's that impacting them at the moment? What are you seeing? What patterns are you seeing?
Well, I think, there's a lot of people out there on the front line. So I think for people who are working on the front line and doing that type of work, so they're not at home, immediate in their mind is around survival. And it's all about, if they're getting the equipment they need, and also thinking about finances, because there has been so much in the press about where this is all going. It's still all a lot of speculation. But for individuals, it's very nerve-wracking to know whether or not they'll be able to afford to do what they need to do and to survive and live. So I think, there's all sorts of different levels going on here. And there's a pyramid, which people probably heard of, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is quite interesting, because it talks about that you have to move through different, almost like level of need, and get those met before you can go on to the next one, although often lots of things happen in parallel. And I think for a lot of people at the moment, we're in this survival mode. There's a lot of ambiguity. People we thought would have answers have some answers, but it's really unclear for everyone. So I think there's a lot of worry around money. I think also people in some ways is like cooped up together, if they are. They're noticing things about their relationship that maybe they hadn't. There are people who are planning perhaps to live together and are using this as an opportunity to test that out. So it's bringing up all sorts of things, because, as we all know, it's something that's been foisted on everyone. It was to some extent not expected, although there's been speculation over past years that something like this could happen. And it happened so rapidly, and it's been so extreme, and we're all struggling to get through this together. So I think all of those things, as well as the survival, but also the impact it's having, is really just making people question lots of things about who they are, about their relationships, about, practical things like money. If they can pay the mortgage, what's going to happen, all sorts of things like that. It's a difficult time for people.
So how can we navigate this? What tools have you got for us that will help us navigate this period in time? And for us to start talking about, what we want after lockdown's finished, what is there a new direction for us? Do we want to make some changes? Is there some kind of, what sort of questions do we need to be asking, or what kind of tools that can we use to kind of navigate this?
And I think that's such a great question, because I think everybody is questioning things at the moment, Susie. And I hope you don't mind, but I took the Psychologies Wheel of Life, because I think it's such a good structure, and it's much easier to...
Yeah, I'll show everybody what we're talking about. Yeah, look, so this one's Psychologies, ta-da! And this is on page 46. It's the Wheel of Life. So go on, Jacqui, I'll hold it up and you can talk.
Okay, great. Well, it's quite hard to see it round just on the screen, but basically it's split into, I think it's 8 categories. And you can actually adjust these if you want to anyway, but it looks at, parts of your life. It might be money or well-being or relationships, health, all those key things that enable you to just live your life as best you can. So, usually it's used as an exercise to identify, you can score it, so you can actually look at where are there gaps in your life across certain areas that are important where you could make improvements. But instead, it's a really good structure to just think about how the lockdown, really, how everything that's happening has affected you, and perhaps how things have changed for you, and to just use it as an experiment to start gathering information to get to know yourself a bit better. So things like, your values, your character, your outlook on life, perception, aspirations. Are there areas where you were sure before all this happened of where you were going, the direction you were taking, the career you were in, the relationship you were in, whereas actually now you're starting to question some of those things. And again, not necessarily to make any decisions now or to take any action, but just to notice while you're in this forced period of shutdown and to some extent reflection, to just gather that information and get to know yourself a bit better. You may have discovered that you've got strengths that you didn't know you had before. Or are there sort of frequent types of behavior or habits or patterns that you're noticing? Again, often with couples, they can get into a kind of loop, a dynamic where they end up arguing. But actually, there's a trigger to that, and it can be linked to something that's actually unconnected with what's actually going on in the here and now. So just noticing if there are lots of, habitual patterns happening. Again, not to do anything, just to gather the information. And also think about where your life has been interrupted. It could be about commuting, and are you secretly pleased about that, but you can't actually say anything. But again, it can inform you about how you might like your life to be once we all emerge from this. So it's looking for things that normally you might not have time for, because we're all to some extent on this hamster wheel, working really hard, usually going to work, relationships, friends, there's never any time. And although people are still busy, there's a different type of time that's going on that maybe gives us a bit more of a chance to self-reflect. And I was also just going to add that you can take that out and just think about interactions with your family and friends and neighbours, co-workers, and what do you think about them? How have they stepped up to what's going on? Are there any surprises? Are people the way that you expected them to be? Are they who you think they are? And importantly, how might you feel about that again as we emerge from this? Are they people who are supportive towards you and you want to keep around you? Or actually, has there always been a bit of a weird dynamic or something going on that you need to think about and look at? So I suppose in summary for that, there's, it's just a gathering data exercise. It's like an experiment to really notice what's different about you, what's different about your habits or dynamic, and just to make a note of that, using the structure of the wheel. And then at some point, once you've let it marinate a bit, you can start brainstorming, maybe focus on 1 or 2 areas. It's so important to keep it focal and not try and do everything and boil the ocean. But just, what might be holding you back from making any of the changes to emerge into a life that's more suited to who you are, and also how you might support yourself through that and who can support you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it feels like there's a really big piece about using this as a kind of, it feels like the great pause, as it's been called, that we use it as an experiment. That's the word you use, to sort of look at ourselves and go, what's working, what's not, and I always talk about heart leap and heart sink. What makes things that make your heart leap and what things that make your heart sink. And what do you truly value, in this time? And what I'm noticing for myself is, kindness, and positivity and humor. So when we can't, when it's, the news is quite grim, that people are using humor to deflect, or, and that's, it's good to be around, and it's how people are in this time, and how I am being in this time, and how I can manage my own interactions with people so I'm not horrid, or not vomiting my anxiety over other people, but rather just like, okay, I'm feeling a bit low, how, and then finding a way, a new way to kind of find a new way of managing your own communication style, so you can be a reasonable person to be around in this time. It's really interesting. In terms of the kind of idea of changing things, this is not, do you think this is not a time to change things? It's more a time to reflect and to look at things? Because I think, if you said, there's, we might have, oh, I want to change my job, I don't want to commute. A lot of people are having this, oh, I'm just giving up my job. A lot of my friends from Sussex, I can't commute anymore, that's it, I don't want to do that, I'm giving up my job. And it's like, okay, just right, hold on to that thought, but don't do anything just yet. Or in relationships, if they're struggling in their relationships, right, yeah, I knew these problems are there, oh my god, I just want to end it all. Is this period, this great time, to make big changes, or is it just time to reflect? What should we do in this time, if anything?
Well, I think it's something. I think the way you just said it's like, hold that thought. I think that's so important, not to act or react to thinking about things or what's going on, because to some extent it's an artificial situation and it will change, and people are affected by the situation they find themselves in, and so whatever they're discovering about themselves may change as, for example, lockdown is lifted, and things drift back to what seems to be more normal. So I think it's really important, unless there's something extreme that just can't be tolerated, and people need support with, that it is probably not a time to act on any of the, if you like, findings. I'm sort of taking a bit of a data approach here, but I think the whole idea of this is to just, in this situation, it's like another dimension on who you are, is just to really notice that. It's like, get a glimpse into that and see how that's different to how you thought you were. And it doesn't mean you have to act on it now. And I would always strongly suggest that people just don't act or react, but to use that as it's like a platform or a basis for exploring further and to really understand what it means. So if someone's having such a strong reaction to something, which they've actually, say, commuted for years, done something in a particular way for years, and suddenly they realize they want something different, to actually spend not necessarily an equal amount of time, but a good amount of time invested in how that might work for them, and also the real implications of making that change. Because this, again, to say it again, it's kind of, it's a bit artificial at the moment. And just coming back to the earlier point, money is so important. So I don't think anybody should just drastically give up their job because they don't like it, without having thought through what that means and how that will affect them in other areas of their life. So, there's always other things to be taken into account, that sort of knock-on effect.
Sure. As you say, it's about getting your basic needs met, taking note. Is there what it feels like is, I suppose what I'm afraid, for me, I think we've got a lovely comment here from Sarah saying she's really enjoying a simpler, slower pace right now, and taking time out for yourself, or looking after yourself as well, and as well as other people. And I'm definitely finding that too. I was definitely on this trajectory myself, trying to live a slower, more simple life. Just moved onto a canal boat, so I get it and I understand it, but I'm really worried about, once the lockdowns, that I'll lose those lessons and I'll go straight back into this busy life that I was leading. So how do we hold on to that wisdom? Should we write a diary about it, or what could help us kind of remember these lessons that we're learning?
I think journaling or keeping a diary is always a useful way to focus on what's most speaking to you, in a way, what's most on your mind. And I think there is a danger that as we kind of drift back to a more normal way of life, what we're used to, that it's easy to lose all of this. And I think that goes back to, what are the, say, what top 3 things that are really, that you've noticed that actually you would like to change, or one would like to change, and how could that happen, and what would the plan be to make that happen, and what are the implications around that, and to keep that somewhere as a reminder. I mean, because it is too easy to lose things. The only thing is, though, I think once you become aware of, especially on the level that not so much that you prefer something a different way, but really getting to that point of thinking it's who you are. So it's like, who do you want to be in the future, and how do you want your life to be? And if you can map that out in a particular way, so you've got, I don't know, something tangible to compare it to, what you might rush back to, then you've got to make a decision around it. And I think that's about owning it as well. So if it, in some ways, I hate to say the word, but if it's in your face, that actually consciously you're choosing to go back to a way of life that you've decided you really don't want to live for certain reasons, then in some ways that's okay too. But at least you've owned the decision around it, rather than just reacting and getting back on the hamster wheel or treadmill.
Yeah, or I mean, for many of us, it will be the case that we're going back to a certain way of life for a while, until we can kind of get a foothold and start making the changes that we can. So, what I mean? So you may think, yep, I definitely can't do that bit anymore, be it a relationship or work or whatever. And then it's going through a process of change management in your own life, isn't it? Of managing that change. And as you say, creating a map or a model to get towards where you want to be. Yeah. Good.
And there are tons of resources out there as well. So, I mean, on your Life Leap platform, there's lots of resources for people to get support. And I think often talking to other people about things, bouncing ideas off them, having a reality check all the time, to check out perception on things and if something could work. And also just in terms of values, that if through this noticing that your values weren't being met in the past, or that your values have changed and you want something different for your future, you can make a list of, I don't know, the top 3 or 5 values that however you live your life in future, it needs to match those or meet those. And so in work, for example, that might be, does the work you do enable you to expand and grow? Or does it shut you down? So if one of your values is whatever you're doing as an activity, you have to expand and grow within it and feel good about it, you have your answer about whether something can fulfill that for you. And even though there's, in some ways, they're like exercises with structure, it keeps it visible. And on your agenda, because I think that's when it gets lost if we don't make a note of these things.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic example. It's a fantastic example of asking a question such as that. In work, does it help me expand versus contract? And it's either a yes or no answer. So you're like, okay, yeah, it doesn't. Right. Okay, and then it gives you a pathway to like, okay, let me find work that will allow me to do that. And what does that look like, rather than just the kind of blank page. It's really great. Jacqui, this is fantastic. This is so good and so useful. Really, it's great. It's given me lots of things to think about as well. It's really, really useful. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can contact Jacqui at the Wheel of Life is in Psychologies subscriber club, which is called the Life Leap Club. A new issue is out now. You can subscribe 3 issues for £5, which is amazing. So do look on the website for that. Jacqui, thank you very much for your help with kindness today. Really inspiring conversation. Lots of love and see you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Okay, I think that's stopped. Thank you.